Committee on Insurance will come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Chairman Oliverson.
Present.
Vice Chair Ann Johnson.
Here.
Representative Paul. Representative Cortez.
Here.
Representative Perez.
Here.
Representative Kane. Representative Julie Johnson.
Here.
Representative Hall. Representative Caroline Harris.
A quorum is present. Okay, so obviously, members, we have some bills to vote out at some point. However, I'd like to wait till everybody's with us to do that. And we'll probably just take that up as we can, hopefully before we head to the floor, just when we can get everybody here. And we have a busy agenda today, friends. So we'll try to be as efficient as we can. I would just remind you that the 3-minute rule will definitely be in effect today for public testimony, and try not to say something that somebody's already said. Okay, so let's see. Guillen's not here, so we'll just do Rep. Collier first. Okay, so the chair lays out House Bill 389 and recognizes Representative Collier to explain her bill.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, Vice Chair Johnson. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to lay out House Bill 389 before you today. This is the third time I have laid this bill out, and each time I present it to you, I'm reminded of my own cancer journey. When I was diagnosed with cancer, there were many thoughts that ran through my mind. And one of those had to deal with the cost of the treatment that I was planning to have.
Thank you, Audrey.
Instead of worrying about how I was going to pay for something, I should have been focused on how I was going to comply with my doctor's orders. According to the Texas Cancer Registry, about 7,800 people aged 15 to 39 are diagnosed with cancer every year in Texas. That means 7,800 Texans every year are concerned with how they are going to pay for the treatments they need to survive. In addition to coming to terms with their diagnosis and choosing treatment plans, they can also face the risk of infertility. Cancer treatments such as chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery can damage egg and sperm, reproductive organs, and endocrine functions. If a person has to undergo treatment with the risk of infertility, but has the opportunity to preserve their eggs or sperm to potentially start a family later on in life, that choice should be the only one they can make without worrying about the extra cost. While current law requires group insurers to offer coverage of in vitro fertilization, or IVF, procedures, IVF is not the first step in infertility services. In order to even perform IVF, one must preserve their eggs, sperm, or embryos. So one cannot happen without the other. So while current law allows for the IVF procedure to be covered, it does not provide the same protections for the first part. For women to freeze eggs or embryos, the cost can range from $10,000 to $15,000 for the initial procedure. This does not include the storage fees that can cost $300 to $600 each year. Men also have to pay storage fees and can face charges from $1,000 to $12,000 for comparable procedures. These costs disproportionately affect women and people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. In fact, the cost is often cited as a barrier to these necessary fertility preservation services. HB 389 seeks to eliminate the cost barrier and provide fertility preservation services to those risking infertility for medically necessary treatments, including chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery. These services must be standard procedures to preserve fertility, consistent with the standard medical practices or guidelines published by the American Society of Clinical Oncology or the American Society for Reproductive Medicine. This bill, in order to address state fiscal concerns, does not include the state child health plans and Medicaid policies. HB 389 allows infertility to be treated as a side effect as cancer, as it should be. These young people do not have another way to prevent infertility risk unless they postpone or forego cancer treatments. This bill passed out of this committee twice, and it made it to the floor and passed. So I'm asking for your favorable consideration because those who have found themselves in need of this service, fertility preservation is not considered an elective or experimental. It is a vital part of the process to preserve their future hopes of starting a family. It is, for those facing medically necessary services that can result in infertility, a necessary part of their process to healing. Let's not get in their way. And with that, I reserve the right to close.
Thank you, Representative Collier. We appreciate that, and thank you for bringing this bill, and we appreciate your tenacity and steadfastness in continuing to champion this. So appreciate that. Members, any questions? Okay, we'll reserve your right to close.
Thank you.
The chair calls Amanda Rice. Yeah. So Amanda, I have you registered as the CEO and founder of the Chick Mission and also yourself, and you are for the bill.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Please continue.
A few words come to mind: dignity, hope, faith, and family. I stand here before you today as a 3-time cancer survivor in my 30s. I stand in front of you seemingly healthy. I just hit remission in November. But what you don't see is the invisible scars and heartbreak that many survivors and their families carry around with them. My invisible scar and heartbreak includes being infertile. In fact, after multiple surgeries, radiation, and chemotherapy, my body went directly into menopause after treatment, ending my hopes. This is very common for young women and men after cancer treatment. Methods used to save your life will ultimately lead to dreams of motherhood being shattered. There are approximately 7,800 Texans between the age of 15 and 39 that will be diagnosed with cancer this year. Over 92% of them will go on to survive and live a long life. That is incredible news, but it comes with a catch. Less Texas children, less Texas mothers, less Texas fathers. I am proud to share that I am the founder of a small nonprofit organization run by cancer survivors and their families. We now have over 370 women who still have hope for biological children after cancer because of our work. But it doesn't need to stop there. If insurance providers were mandated to cover this small patient population, we could continue to change lives for families fighting cancer. There is legislative precedent here. It was only back in 1998 that reconstruction after a mastectomy was mandated by law to be covered by insurance. Surgery to remove the cancer was covered, but the reconstruction that made you whole was not covered. This seems incredibly barbaric today, yet this was only 25 years ago. This may seem like a strange parallel, but this took legislative action, something I am imploring each and every one of you today to consider. Thank you very much.
Amanda, thank you very much for being here, and we thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions for Ms. Rice? Thank you so much for being here. The chair calls Dr. Elizabeth Potter. Good morning, Dr. Potter. I have you registered as Elizabeth Potter, testifying on behalf of the Texas Medical Association and yourself, and you are for the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, please share your testimony.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chairman Oliverson, Vice Chair Johnson, and committee members for allowing me to testify today. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Potter. I'm a reconstructive plastic surgeon here in Austin. I am testifying on behalf of myself and TMA and its more than 57,000 members in support of House Bill 389. Patients who are diagnosed with and treated for cancer often survive with a variety of adverse side effects from the treatment. These issues can include infertility, egg or sperm damage, and premature menopause caused by their cancer treatment. Fertility preservation services such as sperm, egg, and embryo freezing and storage can be an effective option for cancer survivors who wish to start a family in the future. However, these services are often unattainable due to high cost, which can total in the tens of thousands of dollars. Health insurance typically does not cover these services. This bill would provide insurance coverage for fertility preservation services to women who are receiving medically necessary treatment, including surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. House Bill 389 would be ideal for women's health. We have strong TMA policy adopted by our House of Delegates that advocates for payment of fertility preservation therapy services by all payers when infertility may be caused directly or indirectly by necessary medical treatments, as determined by a licensed physician. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members, for allowing me to testify today in support of House Bill 389. I appreciate your work. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members, any questions for Dr. Potter? Thank you for being here today, and happy First Tuesday to you.
Thank you.
At this time, the chair calls Dr. Terry Woodard. And this is the last registered witness I have on this bill, so don't want to miss your opportunity. Dr. Woodard, I have you as Terry Woodard, Director of Oncofertility Program at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. Are you testifying on behalf of UT MD Anderson?
Correct, but
Okay,
neutral.
and then you're testifying neutral on the bill. Okay, great. Please share your testimony with us.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Terry Woodard, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Gyne-Onc and Reproductive Medicine and director of the Oncofertility Program at UT MD Anderson. I am a resource witness representing MD Anderson and testifying on House Bills 389 and 1649. A cancer
We're
diagnosis.
just going to talk about 389.
Okay,
now. We don't want to
389,
create
okay.
a problem for either
Okay, I'm
author.
sorry.
Okay.
A cancer diagnosis changes one's life in a moment and has effects on a person's physical and mental health, educational, career goals, financial well-being, and relationships. Cancer treatment can also negatively impact the ability to have a child in the future, and this effect may be irreversible. Cancer-related infertility is known to be a significant cause of emotional distress that often persists many years after a person has been cured. I was hired by MD Anderson in 2012 to develop an oncofertility program to address the fertility needs of people diagnosed with cancer. The major focus of my practice is on fertility preservation, which gives people the opportunity to have children in the future if they become infertile. However, 30% of my patient population is made up of survivors, many of whom never had their fertility concerns addressed. For those who have become permanently infertile, the options for having children including using third-party reproduction and/or adoption. However, these options involve complex logistics and are more expensive than fertility preservation. Furthermore, with adoption, people with a history of cancer are often discriminated against when assessing parental fitness. MD Anderson is a leader in recognizing the importance of addressing fertility concerns in patients with cancer. It is the first and only comprehensive cancer center that has a full-time reproductive endocrinologist on staff. We have made meaningful impact in generating awareness about cancer-related infertility and promoting adherence to the American Society of Clinical Oncology and National Comprehensive Cancer Network guidelines on fertility preservation. However, our efforts do not reach their full potential due to lack of access to fertility preservation services, particularly because they are unaffordable for most people. The most difficult part of my job is telling patients about fertility preservation and then witnessing their sadness and disappointment when they realize it's not financially feasible for them. I have had many high-risk patients, including adolescents, who tried to secure funding but still cannot afford it. They get the treatment that saves their lives, but they will also have to come to terms with the fact that they will never be able to have a child because of it. In short, cost and the lack of insurance coverage are barriers to treatment, and this is not unique to our institution. It is a challenge in many clinical settings across our state. Requiring coverage for fertility preservation technology will ensure that people who are at risk have access to these services, which are medically necessary and a component of comprehensive cancer care. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate your testimony, and thank you for being here today. Members, are there any questions for Dr. Woodard? Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 389? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Collier to close on her bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. And Dr. Woodard said that MD Anderson has been a leader, but she has also been a leader in this effort. It was her that brought this to my attention several years ago. And the fact that I had just finished cancer treatment really hit a home to me to recognize the need. So this is not unique to Texas. We have mandated particular procedures and services under our insurance code, like I mentioned, IVF. And then you heard the other witness talk about reconstructive surgery. So the time is now. We must act to preserve the life of those that are yet to come. So thank you for your time and attention, and I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Representative. We appreciate you bringing this bill to us.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for being here. Let's see here. Members, are there any other questions? If not, is there any objection to House Bill 389 being left pending? The chair hears none. House Bill 389 will be left pending. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 2752. Let's see, do we have a sub on that or no?
Yes.
The chair lays out a, where is that sheet here? Committee substitute. I don't have a sheet. Okay. And recognizes the author, Representative Schaefer, to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This bill aims to narrow the Department of Insurance's rulemaking authority with respect to ESG policies. When you read the insurance code, it appears that the Department of Insurance would not have the ability to create a substantive policy rule through rulemaking, but it's not quite clear. And in fact, there is a provision that says if it's necessary to maintain the department's accreditation with the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, then they can do it. And so I think what this bill is going to do is say that if we're going to get into a substantive policy area that deals with ESG, then that needs to be expressly authorized by statute. Mm-hmm. And when you read the Insurance Code, Chapter 36, that's kind of what we already have in law, but this is really going to be a belt and suspenders approach to make sure that if the national organization wants to put out a rule or policy that gets into the ESG area, that the state of Texas is going to have an express statute that allows the insurance commissioner to adopt a rule along those lines. Mm-hmm. So I don't think this is the big policy jump here. Really, if you read our law now, that seems to be the intent, but our statute is not quite clear as to what we would do if this was part of our accreditation requirement.
Okay. Members, any questions for Representative Schaefer? I appreciate you bringing this issue, and I think this is really not about ESG. This is more about separation of powers and making sure that the legislature doesn't cede its authority for lawmaking to a non-governmental entity that essentially gets to promulgate policy through manuals or other documents that may be incorporated by reference by a state agency. And so your bill deals with insurance, obviously, but we see this literally across the board in agencies. My opinion is that incorporation by reference was supposed to be used for situations where there were data-driven, sort of fact-based things that, tables, projections, things that could be updated periodically that were mathematical in nature or statistical in nature that would guide a policy or the enforcement of a legislative policy by an agency. And it prevents the legislature from having to come back every 2 to 4 years and update the statute. because essentially you're not changing anything substantive. But to your point, what we see now is a desire, because you can't win at the ballot box, for certain issues where if you can just create ideological capture within a organization that is responsible for promulgating a document used in incorporation by reference, that essentially becomes the way you now make policy. And so I applaud you for recognizing this. I know that Chairman Larry Taylor, Senator Taylor, would be proud of you for bringing this issue, because this was something that he and I talked about a lot, that this is concerning, that the legislature doesn't clearly draw a bright line here and say, data is one thing, but you may not make policy through incorporation by reference.
And we want our insurance market here in Texas to be able to work seamlessly with other states. Those policies and procedures are very important. But when you get into substantive policy decisions, we want that to be left to the legislature and not something that an unelected board at the national level or even our unelected Department of Insurance commissioner might venture into.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly a very, very important principle, constitutionally speaking, that we not cede our legislative authority to, organizations. So I'm glad you brought this bill. I appreciate you for recognizing the severity of this issue and tackling this.
Thank you.
Members, any questions? Okay, we'll reserve your right to close. Let the record reflect that Representative Kane, Representative Paul, and Representative Hull are all here. At this time, the chair calls Mr. Jay Thompson. And this is the last registered witness on this bill. So, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Mr. Chairman, members, my name is Jay Thompson.
So we're going to do a slightly new thing here, Jay. I've been asked parliamentary-wise. Okay. So I will say you are Jay Thompson, representing AFACT, and you are here neutral on this bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, cool. Please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Schaefer. We've worked with him to suggest some language in a substitute bill that I think accomplishes what is intended. The bill is filed, created an exception that seemed to allow rulemaking as opposed to prohibiting it. I remember in 1993 when we passed a bill that limited TDI's adoption of NAIC model laws unless they've been adopted by the legislature. And for the very reasons that Dr. Oliverson, that you're elected to pass laws, state agencies don't legislate. Their rulemaking is a grant from the legislature to do rulemaking in certain instances. So this bill simply creates an exception that even if the NAIC does a rule, you need to approve that. Hopefully it's narrow enough that it's environmental social governance models. That's hard to define. I suggested some language for a definition, but I will confess that that is not an easy task, and we are neutral on the bill, and I think
some experience in that, do you?
This will preserve, hopefully, your power as legislators to enact laws. Happy to answer any questions.
Jay, do your general sense of it, I know you're neutral on the bill, but conceptually, the idea of incorporation by reference, I think, do you see that as kind of being a slippery slope that we should draw attention to? I mean, it can be used for good, right? You can obviously, if we're talking, actuary tables of, life expectancy or some risk or something that's just sort of basic record keeping, you don't want to have to pass a law every time to do that. But
well, it's something I do all the time. In the Constitution, you can't delegate your authority. I see references like to federal law. Mm-hmm. And unless it specifies the federal law as of a certain date when you pass it, you may have delegated to Congress to change Texas law. I see it in numerous places in various codes and stuff, and typically try to raise it specifically in enforcement cases and others. But I think it's a very important for the legislature to be very specific if you're going to reference a manual, even in health insurance. There's nonprofit corporations. If they have a standard, it should be as of a certain date. So when you vote on it, you know what that is as of that date. And try to discourage, just delegating your authority in that manner.
Okay. Members, any questions for Jay? Mr. Thompson, we thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here. I know we'll be seeing you all afternoon and day, and we're
Hopefully,
glad you're here, as
hopefully
always.
short.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2752? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Schaefer to close on his bill.
I close, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you bringing this issue. Members, if there's no, let's see, the chair withdraws the complete committee sub. If there is no objection, House Bill 2752 will be left pending. Is there objection? Hearing none, House Bill 2752 will be left pending. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 1649 and recognizes Chair Angie Chen Button to explain her bill.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. And thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to discuss HB 1649. This is an almost basically identical bill as Chairwoman Collier just presented a few minutes ago, the HB 389. So I'm not going to kind of repeat everything and you already heard about it. I just want to go ahead and share you the personal story why I take this, responsibility to fight this bill. And as you all probably already heard that Chairwoman Collier has been working on these issues for many, many years, and she is also a joint author for my bill. And both of us have a tremendous respect for each other. And she shared her personal story about her breast cancer, but I'm going to take a little bit of different angle to share our personal story. It's about my husband, who I did get a permission to talk about this. What happened is, my husband and I, we were UT Dallas graduate school sweethearts, and in his 40s, during the regular medical exam, we found out he has an extremely high PSA number. At that time, we didn't even know what does it mean, PSA, but doctor, you know what I meant. And then we find out he actually had a real advanced prostate cancer. And the doctor said that, for men, if you get to 60, 70, it's gradually getting to that situation. But somebody as young as his age, it is just incredible, serious. And you can tell that the whole family just under incredible stress. And then during the same time, I also find out that my mom had colon cancer, and it was very much advanced. So it's like two doctors, because usually operations have to go with the doctor, which hospital they choose. So I have to take care of both of them during the same time. So it's kind of like that movie, the Oscar movie, that everything, everywhere, all happen all at once. And during that time, and later on, some people asked me, "Did you cry?" I said, "I did not have time to cry. I have to make arrangement for both of them." And my mom, she does not. She passed away now. She did not speak English, so make it so difficult. And then, with God's bless, everything finally worked out. So every day when I look at my husband, they always joke about, "Well, why you two always walk, around the Capitol holding hands." And he took early retirement from Texas Instruments to help me with my legislative efforts. I tell you why, because every day is just so valuable, so precious to both of us. Okay? So let me get back to this bill. And he and I talk a lot of things. So when somebody brought this bill to me, and I know the Chairman Collier has been working on that, I said maybe I can help by sharing my side of story. Our goal is to let it pass the finish line. It's not taking credit for anything, okay? And then basically, you all know I'm a businesswoman, and everything I always go through this very logical thinking pattern. And just like the chairman yourself, I am against the insurance mandates, okay? But in this case, I thought about how lucky I am because first, even my husband got the prostate cancer, serious one, at the 40s. We already had one child who just a wonderful kid. Of course, I have a lot of people say, oh, well, Representative Button, you love kids so much, doing all those child care efforts, everything. Then why you only have one child? Of course, I didn't want to didn't want to bother people to tell the whole story why we only have one child, because if at that time, if we only have to do one care for my husband, Darcy Button, and instead of have to take care of both parents, we will think about this fertility preservation effort. And we save every penny, but we were able to afford this kind of effort because we just save every penny, okay? But think about those people cannot afford saving the money or just don't have enough income to cover this. And it goes back to I talked to Darcy this morning when we walk into the Capitol 6:55. And I say, Darcy, you think I'm doing the right thing? Because basically I am against the insurance mandates. And Darcy looked at me. Darcy says, we are not talking about having the resources to buy a new toothpaste. We are talking about when people under tremendous stress, we need some kind of help to help them go through this critical time. And think about how lucky we were because we already had one child. Think about this most precious, one of the most precious gifts from God is to have our reproducing ability to bring the next generation. And please, I know that logically you might think, hey, I'm just like, most people we are business-like. But please, I wish that my little sharing will bring out the other side inside your heart and think about those people who are not able to have the most precious, one of the most precious assets from God, that is the ability to generate the next generation and continuing your life. So thank you for listening to my story. Once again, I did get my approval from my wonderful husband and to share this story because this is very sensitive. And for men, they don't want to broadcast this, but I appreciate his unselfishness allowing me to share this story with each of you, audience as well. So please give a little bit of consideration, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate your testimony, and thank you for bringing this bill. And we will reserve your right to close. Members, any questions for Chair Button? Okay, we'll reserve your right to close.
Thank you. I try not to cry to mess up my makeup. I have to go back to conduct my own committee.
At this time, the chair calls Ms. Amanda Rice. And Amanda, I have you as Amanda Rice, CEO and founder of the Chick Mission, and you're also testifying for yourself, and you are for the bill. And yes. I've been informed that since you previously testified on, it's very much the same exact bill, You don't have to read your testimony again if you don't want to. You can just basically affirm that you want us to include your testimony for both bills.
I'm going to read it again for a couple of folks who weren't in here
Okay,
before, if you
all
don't
right.
mind, Chairman.
Please continue.
Thank you. This time I'll try not to cry. Dignity, hope, faith, and family. I stand here before you today as a 3-time cancer survivor in my 30s. I stand in front of you seemingly healthy, but what you don't see are the invisible scars and heartbreak that many survivors and their families carry around with them forever. My invisible scar includes being barren. In fact, after multiple surgeries, radiation, and chemotherapy, my body went directly into menopause after treatment, ending my hopes of having a biological family. This is very common for young women with cancer. Methods used to save your life will ultimately lead to dreams of motherhood being shattered. There are approximately 7,800 Texans between the age of 15 and 39 that will be diagnosed with cancer this year. Over 92% of us will survive and go on to live a long, healthy life in remission. This is incredible news, but it comes with a catch. Less Texas children, less Texas mothers, less Texas fathers, less grandparents, aunts, uncles, and godparents. I am proud to share that I am the founder of a nonprofit run by cancer survivors and their families. We now have over 370 ladies who still have hope for biological children after cancer because of our work. But it doesn't need to stop here. If insurance providers were mandated to cover this small patient population, we could continue to change lives for families fighting cancer. There is legislative precedent here. It was only back in 1998 that reconstruction after a mastectomy was mandated to be covered by law under insurance. Surgery to remove the cancer was covered, but the reconstruction that made your body whole was not. This seems incredibly barbaric, yet this was only 25 years ago. And this may seem like a strange parallel, but this took legislative action, something I am imploring each and every one of you to consider today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. We appreciate you being here, and I think it was even better the second time. Thank you. Members, any questions for Ms. Rice? Thank you so much for being here. At this time, the chair calls Mr. Tom Whiteside. And I have you registered as Tom Whiteside, testifying on behalf of yourself and that you are for the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, please share your testimony.
This is my third time in front of this committee over the last 3 sessions. Thank you very much for your time, and it's an honor to be here. Representative Chin Button talked about luck. I want to talk a little bit about luck. When I was 26 years old, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. We'll get to the luck, don't worry. I was living in New York City, and I had these night sweats. I didn't know what was happening. I came home for Thanksgiving, home here to Texas, and it was actually my mom who made me go to the doctor, as women tend to be the gatekeepers of health in a household. And what started was a domino chain that led to a diagnosis of stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. I was 26, I was single. I had just moved to New York City to pursue my dream of working in publishing, and then my world was flipped upside down. I was given this cancer diagnosis, stage 4. So I never went back to New York. I stayed there in Lubbock, Texas, where I grew up. I went to the Joe Arrington Cancer Center. I had great doctors because I had access to insurance. After meeting with my medical oncologist, he said at stage 4, we recommend this certain line of treatment. It's going to be harder on you, but you're young and otherwise healthy. But one of the side effects is a high risk of infertility. And I was single, and I had not really thought about children, but I certainly knew I wanted the opportunity to have children later in life. So I said, well, what do I do? And he said, well, you need to bank your sperm. And I said, well, okay, where do I go? And he said, I don't know. I had to look up and find the fertility clinic in Lubbock. And by the way, I'm not knocking him. His job was to save my life from cancer. And I was able to go, and because I am lucky, I had some resources. I had my parents in Lubbock, Texas, to help me pay out-of-pocket costs to bank my fertility. I even pushed back the start of chemo by 1 day so that I could go one more time. This is 2006. At the end of 2007, I was declared in remission, and I'm today cured, quote unquote cured, after 5 years. And I'm lucky because last year on May 14th, we welcomed my daughter Rosemary into this world. I know it's a little far away, but rest assured she's adorable.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And again, I'm one of the lucky ones. I had the resources out of pocket to deal with this. Also, because I'm a man, it costs far, far less to preserve my fertility. When a young adult is diagnosed with cancer, their world is already turned upside down. They're dealing with all kinds of emotions, as you can imagine. And of course, with insurance, you know you'll be cared for, right? We would never think, oh, you're not going to get access to anti-nausea medicine, right? Fertility preservation in this age group is standard of care. So I appreciate your listening to this. We appreciate Angie Chin Button and Representative Collier, and we hope you will pass this through.
Thank you, Tom. So tell me a little bit about the cost per year for you. You had banked your sperm and then obviously stored it for a little while. What was the cost per year for maintenance? I mean, obviously there's the harvesting part, but then you have this ongoing maintenance cost. What's that like?
I paid $750 for the first year, which included 1 year of storage, and then, like anything, the more years you pay for in advance. But I would say it was on average between $400 and $700 a year. And now I know I look really young, but it was in storage for quite a few years. So over the 15 or so years, many thousands of dollars, which again is a drop in the bucket compared to what it costs for women to preserve their fertility.
Sure, sure. And did ever, so you put, I'm just curious, I'm trying to, since you've been through this, does it ever move? Is it the same bank that you started with 12 years ago, or?
Mine did move. It was between the same provider, but they moved it to Austin, which is where we did for fertility treatment.
Okay.
So there was a
basically
transfer
the
fee.
same long-term storage.
Exactly, yeah.
Essentially, different facility.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, there was a transfer fee, not terribly expensive, but another out-of-pocket cost.
Okay. And then is there a separate, is that when you access it, when you do, I'm assuming it was IVF you did, and so is that something that is completely separate? Was that a completely different doctor in charge and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so in Lubbock was the preservation, and
Right.
then it was frozen, and then many years later moved to Austin, and then we went to a fertility clinic here to do IVF.
Okay, all right, perfect. Well, we thank you for being here, admire your courage, and appreciate you sharing your story with us. Members, any questions? Okay, thanks for your testimony. At this time, the chair calls Ms. Haley Curley, sorry. Hello, Haley, how are you?
I'm great.
Good.
I'm nervous, but I'm good.
Well, you're going to do excellent. I know you will. I have you as Haley Curley, testifying on behalf of yourself.
Correct.
And you are for the bill.
Yes.
All right. Please share your testimony with us.
Right. Good morning, committee. My name is Haley Curley, and I'm a born and raised Texan. I'm honored to be here in support of House Bill 1649. And to give you a little backstory on my life, it has been a bundle of blessings. I was fortunate to grow up in this beautiful state, always have a roof over my head, and have two incredible parents that did their best to prepare me for everything I may face in life. Although, unfortunately, after just graduating college, we hit a hurdle that none of us saw coming. On Friday, March 8th of 2019, I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma, which is a type of breast cancer. I was only 24 years old at the time. And in that week that followed, my world was flipped upside down, and my newfound freedom in my 20s turned into a 7-month treatment plan that consisted of a double mastectomy just 12 days after my diagnosis, 16 chemotherapy treatments, and 28 radiation appointments. Cancer is a different beast that I didn't have much knowledge about, but my doctors sat me down and told me about all the side effects that range from fatigue, joint pain, to throwing up blood and having numbness in my extremities. But the one that really took the air out of my lungs was the possibility of becoming sterile. I always knew I wanted kids in my future, but I never realized how much until the possibility may have been taken away. When I brought up my concern of becoming sterile, my doctor recommended me to a fertility specialist, but that came with a price tag of $9,000. So there I was, 24 years old, with a mountain of debt and student loans, working an entry-level job that paid me just enough to cover my bills, and whatever was about to be tacked on for my future cancer treatments. I knew I could not afford the procedure, and I could not afford the opportunity of the safety net of having kids in the future. Thankfully, my fertility doctor gave me a list of resources, and by the grace of God, I got support from my community, my parents, and the Cancer Rutledge Foundation. I'm so thankful, and I cannot express in words how thankful I am to my community, my parents, and the Rutledge Foundation because they were able to give me the means to cover the treatment. And now because of them, I have 14 beautiful eggs waiting for me when I'm ready to start a family. They provided me with the peace of knowing that I can be a mom in the future, that I can give my parents grandkids one day, and the fact that I can have a spouse and give them future kids, and a miracle that we can grow on and love in someday in the future. I would not be standing here if I did not believe in the cost, if I did not believe that the cost of this procedure is hindering the opportunity of cancer patients like myself to have a family in the future. I personally know survivors who are not able to afford the treatment, can no longer have kids, and since then have been in emotional turmoil and actually been left by their partners because of it. Today we are asking insurance companies to cover a side effect to a medically necessary treatment. With the passing of this legislation, you're giving hope to cancer patients all over who cannot afford the cost of fertility preservations, that one day we will all be able to grow up and grow and love a family of our own. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Hey, and that was perfect timing. See, I knew you were going to do well. You did exceptionally well. That's great. That's great, Haley. We admire your courage for being here today. I know you've been through some struggles, and you look amazing. You've obviously recovered from cancer, and we give praise for that. And
Thank you.
we're just glad that you're here today.
Thank you for
I think
having me.
Representative Cortez had some questions for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
Sure.
I just wanted to thank you also for your story and your courage and sharing it with us here. And obviously, Chair Button's bill and Chair Collier's bill are excellent bills. I fully intend to support them, but it takes a lot of courage to come and share your story with us. And I appreciate you and your family being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And members, any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. At this time, the chair calls Dr. Karen Albritton. She didn't testify. Okay.
Not easy to follow. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Oh, okay, I got to do my thing here. Sorry, we're doing it a little differently today just to keep everybody on the straight and narrow. So I have you as Dr. Karen Albritton testifying on behalf of yourself, and you are for the bill.
Yes.
Okay, please share your testimony with us.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Dr. Karen Albritton. I'm an oncologist at Cook Children's Medical Center and Baylor Scott & White All Saints Hospital in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm considered an international expert in young adult oncology, and I wish to speak in favor of House Bill 1649. As you've heard, there are 1,700 young adults diagnosed with cancer each year in Texas, and they have an amazing cure rate of over 85%. But this success has come at a cost, the harm that our treatments can cause. As an oncologist, we are increasingly focused on issues of survivorship, saving lives without medically induced side effects that diminish the quality of that life. For example, developments in the prevention of nausea are enormous. I can now tell a newly diagnosed patient that they may in fact never vomit because I will give them advanced medicines before the first drop of chemotherapy is ever given. No one would ever think of giving chemotherapy without those preventative anti-nausea medicines, and no one would question having insurance cover that medically indicated procedure. About half of young adult cancer patients receive treatments that put them at risk of infertility. Fortunately, there have been great advances in the field of fertility preservation, too. There are non-experimental, standard of care options for both male and female patients. However, unlike for anti-cancer medicines, insurers have not kept up with these medical advances, and these preservation services are almost never covered. What a roller coaster. I start giving the devastating news of a diagnosis to a person in the prime of their life. Then I give them the hopeful news that the therapies have great cure rates. But then I have to let them know that their cure rate may cause infertility. Then more good news. There are options that might protect their parenthood. But then the final crash, it will cost hundreds to thousands of dollars out of pocket because insurance won't cover it. As painful as that roller coaster is, I am ethically obligated to discuss this side effect and offer those preservation options following the recommendations of the American Cancer Society, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, the National Clinical Cancer Network, who recognize that fertility preservation is part of cancer care. What happens if patients can't afford it? Some patients choose to stop or choose suboptimal treatments to minimize the impact of their fertility. And then there are the psychological costs. Studies have shown that survivors with infertility have lingering distress, depression, and anxiety. Now, if you hesitate to vote yes, worrying the message it sends is that you support insurance mandates, I urge you instead to think that the message you are sending to young Texans with cancer is that we value families and children. We believe that you will beat this and that we value your hopes and dreams. Thank you for supporting House Bill 1649.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate you being here. Members, any questions for Dr. Albritton? Thank you so much for being here today. At this time, the chair calls Dr. Terry Woodard. And Dr. Woodard, I'm going to say to you what I said to the other witnesses. I know this would be your second time testifying, and you are happy to, I mean, if you want to just say ditto or whatever, same testimony, that's fine. Or you can say your whole testimony over again. It's totally up to you. But I do have you registered as Terry Woodard, Director of the Oncofertility Program, in testifying on behalf of University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center, and you are neutral on the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I will get this correct this time. So I will not repeat my testimony, but I am happy to answer any questions that you may have had that arose from the prior testimonies.
Doctor, what is the what's the cost of the, so if you're a young woman who finds yourself, you know, diagnosed with cancer and this is a side, you know, sterility would be a side effect, what is the cost at the Oncofertility Program for the harvesting of eggs and the annual storage cost? Do you know?
So it varies from clinic to clinic, but our clinic, it's about $10,000 plus the cost of medications, which depending on ovarian reserve and age can range from about $2,000 to $6,000.
Okay. Okay. And then what's the maintenance cost? Do you store the
So actually, where I work, we don't store tissue on site. We prefer to send it to a third-party place called Reprotect for safe keeps, but that cost ranges from about $300 to $600 per year.
Okay, so it's really the upfront cost of the collection that's really sort of the barrier. The annual cost is
correct,
less than the cost of your cell phone bill, probably monthly if you're like me with a family of 5. Okay. All right, well, we appreciate you being here. Appreciate your testimony. Members, any questions for Dr. Woodard? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against House Bill 1649? If not, the chair recognizes Chairwoman Button to close on her bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and thank you for allowing us to share the insights, and thank you for listening to our emotional stories. And I close.
All right. Members, any questions? If not, okay. If there's no objection, House Bill 1649 will be left pending. Is there objection? Hearing none, House Bill 1649 will be left pending. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 4067 and recognizes the author, Representative Vo, to explain his bill. It's good to have you back in the Insurance Committee, my friend. Miss you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Happy to be here this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for allowing me to lay out House Bill 4067. Texas law contains various requirements that apply to insurers that use prior authorization processes. Among those requirements are certain transparency requirements, as well as timelines with which insurers and HMO must comply when reviewing and approving or denying a prior authorization request. Physicians have expressed desire for the Texas Department of Insurance to more regularly examine the extent of insurer and HMO compliance with the statutory timelines. This desire stems from concerns regarding the impact non-compliance has on patient health and finances, as well as provider burdens related to completing the processes. This bill would require TDI Commissioner to perform examinations of insurers offering PPOs, EPOs, as well as HMOs for their compliance with requirements related to prior authorizations, including timelines for response to prior authorization requests. This would be at the expense of the insurer or HMO. The examinations would be at least once every year and whenever the Commission considers the examination necessary. Additionally, there will be a requirement for the examinations of an insurer with utilization review requirements as a whole, which includes pre-authorization, but also concurrent with retrospective reviews. The bill will also not subject to insurers or HMO to the examination for utilization review compliance if it is already part of another examination that year. In summary, House Bill 4067 is a necessary bill that will help ensure pre-authorization processes do not get in the way of patients receiving care. And thank you, members, Mr. Chairman, members, with that.
Thank you, Representative. We appreciate you being here, appreciate you bringing this bill to us. Members, any questions for Representative Vo? Okay, we'll reserve your right to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. At this time, the chair calls Mr. Blake Hudson. And I have you registered as Blake Hudson, testifying on behalf of the Texas Association of Health Plans, testifying against the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, perfect.
Correct.
Please share your testimony.
Thank you. So we are opposed to the bill as filed, but we did take some language last week and again yesterday to Representative Vo's office, and they said that they would need to speak with Ben. I think that means Ben at TMA, so we're waiting to hear back on that. So we'll see. The health plans already have to do a triennial examination where TDI goes through all of their processes. Additionally, if there's any change in a prior authorization process or really anything that a health plan does, that has to be reported to TDI within 30 days and can be examined. Further, any complaints, and like every other insurance department, it's complaint-driven. Complaints have to be, TDI can go inspect for complaints. So what we requested was to make these changes in that triennial exam, so we didn't create an additional administrative burden on, not making any changes at all to the complaint process. So pretty simple, and that we could be neutral with those changes.
So you're already required to do this every 3 years, and so this would make it annually, or as frequently as they wanted, but at least annually, if I read the bill correctly.
That's correct. It would take just the prior authorization review piece and make it annually, and that would be in addition to any complaints, to any changes done and notified every 30 days, within 30 days.
And I know, obviously, there's some aggravation associated with an audit, but I think the thing I noticed is that you guys have to, the health plan has to pick up the cost of the audit, right?
Yes, sir.
So.
That's correct.
Is it the cost more so that's an issue for you? Because here's the issue on this, is that obviously we spend a fair amount of time in this committee, in this Capitol, and even passing laws dealing with the whole accuracy and sort of, quote, I would say fairness and accuracy of the prior authorization utilization review process. And so it seems to me like one possible remedy for that would be to be sort of more frequent checking to make sure that we're in compliance and that we're, following the timelines and giving due process or whatever,
And I think that's, sort of setting on side changes to the prior authorization process that you may make in the legislature. In many cases, we may be neutral on. That, just going back and looking at the process when there isn't a complaint every year you're not going back and looking to investigating complaints all the time if there exists. I don't think that that's very common, but we don't oppose any of that.
Okay, so and how many, maybe you're not the right person to answer this, but do you know off the top of your head, like how often are complaints filed on these issues?
I didn't bring complaint data. I think it's very, very rare.
Very rare? Okay. Okay. Members, any questions for Mr. Hudson? Blake, I know we'll see you again soon, so we appreciate you. We'll keep your chair there marked off for you, reserved.
I'm still hoping for that one right there.
Well, you just have to file and run for office, my friend. You have to challenge somebody, though. All right. At this time, the chair calls Dr. Tony Aventa. And Dr. Aventa, I have you registered as Tony Aventa, testifying on behalf of Texas Medical Association and yourself, and you are for the bill.
Correct.
All right. Please continue.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you very much for allowing me to testify this morning. My name is Dr. Tony Aventa. I'm an internal medicine physician here in Austin, Texas. Today I'm testifying on behalf of TMA and its more than 57,000 members across the state of Texas for HB 4067. I'd like to thank Representative Vo for filing this bill. As physicians and health care providers across the state often express concerns regarding health plan implementation of prior authorization and other utilization review processes, and the negative impact of these processes on patient care. As has been said in previous weeks before this committee, 85% of physicians report prior authorization has caused delays in care, and 78% said it has led to patient abandonment of treatment. Given the negative impact that prior authorization and other utilization review processes can have on patient care and finances, it's important for health plans to comply with timeframe, transparency, and other requirements. The Texas legislature has already put in place for prior authorization and other forms of utilization review. The goal of HB 4067 is to require TDI to perform more regular examinations, at least annually, to assess the extent of health plan compliance or lack thereof with requirements concerning prior authorization and other forms of utilization review under Texas law. This is an important consumer protection, as it will allow for more timely detection of violations by TDI. The overarching concern here is that patient care may be delayed or negatively impacted, and the patient finances can be negatively impacted as well if the requirements that the Texas legislature put in place are not followed. I thank the committee for working to reduce the negative impact of prior authorizations and utilization review on Texas patients, and for helping physicians, as business owners like myself, reduce the burdens associated with prior authorization and the utilization review procedures. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate you being here today. Members, any questions for Dr. Aventa? Okay, we thank you for all you do for your patients, and thanks for being here. Happy First Tuesday to you. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 4067? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Vo to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I just want to say this, HB 4067 is a necessary bill that will facilitate increased transparency in proceedings between insurers, patients, and providers, and help ensure that pre-authorization process do not prevent patients from receiving care. And with that, I close, Mr. Chairman and members.
All right. Thanks for being here, and thanks for bringing the bill. Members, any questions for Representative Vo? Okay. If there's no objection, House Bill 4067 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 4067 will be left pending. Two quick housekeeping items. Chair recognizes that Representative Caroline Harris is with us. Glad you're here. And the second thing is that for those of you who were brought your popcorn because you wanted to hear the discussion on House Bill 3359 or House Bill 3195, those bills have been postponed by the author, so they will not be heard today. So just a public service announcement. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 687 and recognizes Representative Cole to explain her bill.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee.
The one after that. They're both bonded bills.
Currently, when a patient gives birth to a newborn, the child is covered under their parent's insurance for the first 31 days. On the 32nd day, the child is no longer covered. With hospital stays varying in length for any number of reasons, and with all the responsibilities that parenthood offers when a newborn comes into the world, time can slip away unnoticed. House Bill 687 would simply extend that period from 31 days to 60 days. This ensures that the parents can spend the precious few moments of their child's life with them, as well as give them ample time to add to their new child to their insurance. I'm available for any questions, and I reserve my right to close. And I have no witnesses.
Thank you, Representative. Appreciate you being here. This is a very common sense bill, in my opinion. I thank you for bringing this. This is clearly the intent is for kids to be on the same insurance plan as their parents. And so I just think by doing this is very smart. I like this policy. Members, any questions for Representative Cole? Okay, we'll reserve your right to close.
Thank you, Chairman.
I have only one witness registered to testify on this bill, so don't go too far. The chair calls Mr. Blake Hudson. I think we should move your chair to the front row, because I have a feeling you're going to wear the carpet out today.
Well, we have some things to add to the conversation.
All right, I have you as Blake Hudson, representing the Texas Association of Health Plans, and you are neutral on this bill.
We are, and I just wanted to come up and reiterate why this is a mandate on health plans, but when you really step back and look at this, it's a pretty common sense, and we want to make sure that newborns are covered. We think it's pretty rare that they're not added to insurance in that first 30 days, and the plans are more than happy to make sure that we're getting all of our newborns covered in that 2-month period. So
wow.
we appreciate the bill, and we are neutral on it.
I like that. Members, write that down. This is a mandate, and the health plans think it's common sense and are urging us to pass it. So this is good.
Did I say urging passage?
This is good. This is good. All right. Any questions for Mr. Hudson? Blake, thank you for being here, and we'll see you again soon. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 687? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Cole to close on her bill.
I'll appreciate your support of this common sense bill. Thank you, Chairman.
You are very welcome. Members, any questions? If there is no objection, House Bill 687 will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none. House Bill 687 will be left pending. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 194 and recognizes Representative Ortega to explain her bill.
Good morning.
This one seems familiar to me.
It is. We heard it. Yes, you did, Chairman. But anyway, thank you, Chairman and committee members, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 194. And this one is a common sense one, too. So I hope that the same principle follows on this one. In 2016, a teenager in El Paso died due to improper actions by an amusement ride operator. This tragic accident, and accidents like this, and this is not the only case where this has happened, are the reasons that I am pushing this bill, why I'm bringing it to you today. Current law regarding amusement ride operators fails to adequately protect the safety of Texans, and specifically our children who attend amusement parks, and thus it needs to be strengthened. This bill requires that an amusement ride operator must be at least 16 years of age and trained in the proper use and operation of the ride. It also requires that an operator may not operate more than one ride simultaneously or be intoxicated. The bill makes reference to Section 49.065 of the Penal Code, which makes it a Class B misdemeanor to be intoxicated while assembling or operating an amusement ride. This law has been in effect since 2000, but it's important that it also be mentioned in the Occupations Code, which regulates amusement rides. These are common sense safety requirements for operators, and they mirror the current best practices as determined by the American Society for Testing and Materials, known as ASTM, and they are followed by many other states. Currently, the state law only requires amusement rides to comply with the outdated standards, the 1999 TM standards, and this bill would update the requirements for ride operators, which would then be consistent with the current standards. My office has worked with the National Amusement Ride Organizations and the water parks over the past 2 sessions to craft the language so that the requirements are best practices within the industry. Again, thank you to the committee for allowing me to bring this bill forward, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Representative, we appreciate you bringing this bill. This is the 3rd session you and I have been working on this issue, and some of you from Harris County may recall, but it's been a few years ago now, but we actually had someone fall to their death out of a roller coaster at the rodeo. I mean, literally, like right before we came to session, you know, the year prior to that, we had somebody killed at the rodeo. And you've been trying to do this now for several sessions. I point out that there is no one registered against this bill. And we have somebody here to testify in favor of the bill. So hopefully this is the 3rd time is the charm. We appreciate you being diligent and continuing to bring this back to us. I think this is common sense.
Thank you, and I reserve the right to close, and I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
All right, we'll reserve your right to close. At this time, the chair calls Mr. Ware Wendell. And I have you registered as Ware Wendell, representing Texas Watch, and you are for the bill.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right, please share your testimony with us.
Good morning, and I know you have a full agenda. I will aim to be brief and to the point. We thank Representative Ortega for bringing this important safety bill. We do hope the 3rd time is the charm. In 2016, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission estimated 30,000 injuries requiring trips to the emergency room from these sorts of rides. And so by putting these best practices in the law, we hope that we can avoid more senseless injury and death. Oftentimes, we're talking about seasonal employment, younger workers. This will help to prevent operator error. And a lot of these injuries occur to younger people as well. So it will help to protect lives in this state, especially the lives of our youngest and most vulnerable. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here, and I know you've been working on this. I just quite frankly don't understand why I haven't already passed this. This is, you know, you can't be under 16. You got to actually know how the ride works, and you can't operate more than one ride at the same time, and you can't be drunk and operate a ride. And I don't think that's a lot to ask.
Common sense, simple, best practices. It also protects the workers. And OSHA states that the injury and fatality rates are some of the highest in this industry for the workers. So it protects people riding the rides and the workers.
Maybe if we pass this bill, I might actually be able to convince my dear sweet bride to get on a amusement park ride with me. She doesn't like roller coasters.
Well, my wife is the roller coaster rider in our family, so maybe you and she can take a trip on it.
Taking your life into your own hands here. We'll get a little more safety. Maybe it'll be a little more people will enjoy it. All right, members, any questions for Mr. Wendell? Where we thank you for being here today.
Thank you, sir.
For your testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 194? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Ortega to close on her bill. My classmate.
I close. I mean, you said it all. With 30,000 people that have gotten hurt and nothing has been done for the last sessions, and it's continued to happen, please vote this favorably out of committee. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Did you have a question? No. Okay. He's making hand gestures over here, but it looks like a thumbs up, so that's good.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no objection, House Bill 194 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 194 will be left pending. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 118 and recognizes Representative Cortez. You don't have to go down there if you don't want to. You can. Okay. All right. It's your choice. Okay. And recognizes Representative Cortez to explain his bill.
Such an attractive committee you have here, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 118. In 2021, a man was expected to die from prostate cancer every 15 minutes. In Texas, the American Cancer Society projects 14,200 new cases of prostate cancer and 3,300 deaths.
making prostate cancer the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths in Texas and the second leading cause of cancer deaths of men in the United States. House Bill 118 will ensure that men at the highest risk of developing aggressive prostate cancer can access prostate cancer screenings without any copays, deductibles, or coinsurance. House Bill 118 was drafted to apply to men over the age of 50 and men over the age of 40 with a family history of prostate cancer or another risk factor for prostate cancer. Cost sharing is an unnecessary barrier to screening for prostate cancer and is a critical first step for diagnosis. If detected early, nearly 100% of patients will survive. However, Texas requires insurance to cover yearly prostate cancer screenings, copays, deductibles, and coinsurance, and these are barriers. House Bill 118 will not place undue burden on the health plans, and a mere expense of 3 cents per member is enough to save lifelong pain. I look forward to working with the committee members to work through this bill, House Bill 118, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I reserve the right to close.
Members, any questions for Representative Cortez? Okay, we'll reserve your right to close, my friend. At this time, the chair calls Mr. Robert Wright. And I have you registered as Mr. Robert Wright.
That's correct.
Testifying for yourself, and you are for the bill?
Yes, sir.
And before you begin your testimony, I see that you are a distinguished member of the 101st Airborne Division, and we just want to thank you for your service to our country.
Thanks.
Please share your testimony.
My name is Bob Wright. I'm a 77-year-old prostate cancer survivor. I know where my cancer came from. I was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam almost 50 years ago. I was a combat medic in Vietnam, a battalion surgeon assistant. I'm still a combat medic. And I'm looking after prostate cancer survivors and work with both Zero and us to Austin, a local prostate cancer support group. I'm just going to share my story if it's okay. There's a lot of talking points, but I was in the Rio Grande Valley and had no symptoms, and I'll just share a little bit, except blood in my semen. It scared me. I went to my family doctor. My PSA was normal, 2.4. But he never did a digital rectal exam. I don't know why. He just didn't. He sent me to a gastroenterologist to have a colonoscopy done because my brother had colon cancer. He was a Vietnam vet. And basically, after the procedure was done, the doctor came out with his little mask on and he said, Mr. Wright, he said, a couple of polyps, no big problem. But he said, you have a very, very, very abnormal prostate. And I'm a hospital guy, so I kind of know what that means. And I diddy-bopped and had all the scans done. The scans looked okay. I came to Austin, had the Da Vinci robotic surgery 14 years ago. Vietnam veterans exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam have a 70% greater incidence of prostate cancer than ERA veterans, and they have a 50% more aggressive type of prostate cancer. And they don't really know why, but it happens. The gastroenterologist saved my life because my oncologist and my urologist all said, Mr. Wright, you're very lucky. My Gleason scores were 10s after the pathology. And I said, I know it, but why? They said, well, in 12 to 18 months, you would have been inoperable. And I'm coming here to share with you as a survivor that if I wouldn't have gotten checked early by that just random colonoscopy, who checks prostates when he does colonoscopies, I don't think I'd be here. I don't think I'd be here. The result of a lot of that has to do with prostate cancer survivors. Men don't talk a lot about what they do, but in our support group we do. There are two big boogaboos that we deal with as a result of treatment, either surgery or radiation. One is incontinence, and the other is erectile dysfunction. I have an 80% disability with the VA, 60% is due to incontinence, and the other 20% is PTSD. So we're asking you basically to not look at this bill so much about statistics, because unless you are one, the statistics just are numbers. They're important numbers. But make it known that it's very important because you're going to be participating in helping men all over Texas basically get screening. And when I first got diagnosed, I remember a sign, a poster that us two had. It said, us two is a couple's disease and 1 million women suffer from prostate cancer. And they go, oh, it's a couple's disease because of ED and incontinence. And basically that impacts not just the men, but also the spouses. If you wonder why I do this, I would rather be doing this with prostate cancer survivors than talking to a spouse or a mother or whatever, or children of someone who's passed away. The VA is doing a terrific job. You need to know, because of the PACT Act now, every veteran at the VA is now who might be exposed to a toxic substance. It's now initiated at the first visit with their primary care physician to bring up the topic. The monkey's still on our back about getting the test done. We as survivors or patients still have to ask for it to get done. So we thank you for what you're doing. On the way here, I just had more, way here I got lost, but I'm here. But I felt like, boy, 50 years ago, I was in Vietnam. And 50 years later, I'm here, but I'm still alive. And so I want to thank you for what you're doing, and know that when you go home tonight, because you supported this bill, you're going to say, boy, we did something good today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Members, any questions for Mr. Wright? Sir, we thank you for being here today. And again, we just want to humbly thank you for your service to our country. Thank you. At this time, the chair calls Mr. Patrick Bingham. And Mr. Bingham, I have you registered as Patrick Bingham, testifying on behalf of yourself, and you are for the bill.
Yes, I am. First of all, good morning to everyone.
Please share your testimony with us. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Bingham. I'm a resident of Leander, Texas. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer back in 2005. I was only 46 years old. And so for me, I consider myself kind of a learned person, but I really didn't know prostate cancer, what it was about, what was going on. So like any good Southern son, I asked my mom, and she said, talk to your dad. And my dad said, well, it might just be an enlarged prostate. Me and your Uncle Fred got that. So I sort of blew it off because I thought, talk to Dad, father knows best, as they say. And I guess my wife kind of started talking about things probably a year or two before that time frame. And so when I went and the doctor decided to take a look, they said, yes, you got prostate cancer, which is the words you don't want to hear. And for me, I guess it was more eye-opening with the fact that I found that as an African-American male, but also as a military veteran, that I was more prone to basically develop prostate cancer. 60% of African-American men, basically, a 6% higher rate of prostate cancer. And so for me, it's important that, support for this bill go through because I'm also, I guess, a father of a now almost 31-year-old, just engaged young man. And so for him, he's aware now of what can take place. So it's so very important because we also know that if through early diagnosis, through testing, there's about a 100% chance of men surviving prostate cancer. For those in those advanced stages, 5 years is only like a 30% chance of that survival type rate. And as Bob was saying, prostate cancer is a couple's disease because as things go on, when I was diagnosed on that early outset, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have anybody to kind of talk to. And over the years, thanks to the research that's taken place, we found a lot with the things like the co-pays and those things. Well, for some families, thank God I wouldn't have to. For some families, it makes the difference between do I have to do the co-pay or do I need this money for something else? And then there's also, in particular like the African-American community among veterans, there's also just kind of this apprehension about what's going to take place. What are the costs? How is it going to affect me? And also, like Bob, what I do, I enjoy talking to others to share my story because it lets them know. And so by voting in favor of reducing the co-pays, any sort of cost, it means that the thing that we can do to help other men out and their families is basically exponentially improved. And so I would just thank you once again for what you're doing each and every day. And like it was to support the bill 118. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bingham. Members, are there any questions? Oh, Representative Harris has a question for you. Mr. Bingham?
Oh, yes.
I just want to say thank you for being here. I'm your representative, and so I'm very proud to have you here.
I know you just got
Thank
elected.
you so much.
I pay attention out there who's running.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
We appreciate you, sir. Thank you for being here. At this time, the chair calls, is it Shanae Tracy? Did I say it right? Ooh. Points for me. All right. So I have you registered as Shanae Tracy, and you are here on behalf of Guidestone Financial Resources of the Southern Baptist Convention, and you are against the bill?
Yes.
Okay. Please share your testimony with us.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Alderson, Representative Cortez, and members of the committee. My name is Shanae Tracy, Director of Government Affairs for Guidestone Financial Resources of the Southern Baptist Convention. Guidestone offers health and retirement benefits in the form of self-funded group health plans to churches, mission-sending organizations, and other faith-aligned ministries. Guidestone is recognized as a church benefit board under federal and Texas law. I'm testifying today to respectfully oppose House Bill 118 because church benefit boards like Guidestone are exempt from the ACA in certain aspects of state insurance licensing and solvency requirements under federal law. Church benefit boards like Guidestone have been exempt from this Texas insurance code for nearly 4 decades because of the unique plan needs of its faith-based participants. Additionally, as a substantive matter, Guidestone, which we believe to be the largest church benefit board in Texas, already adheres to no cost-sharing annual tests to detect prostate cancer. We understand the importance of this test, and therefore we don't even require an age limit or requirement to get the detection for prostate cancer. That's just how important it is to our plan. We therefore believe the mandate imposed by this bill is unnecessary and further erodes the longstanding church benefit board's exemption in Texas law. Indeed, we would submit that church benefit boards generally should not be included in health insurance-related legislation because each time they are and bills pass, the carefully considered and longstanding exemption is eroded. And the more the exemption is eroded, the less church benefit boards will be able to provide unique, comprehensive, value-filled, cost-effective, and faith-based healthcare solutions that clergy and denominational to their clergy and denominational participants. The latitude provided in the Texas exemption for church benefit boards allow our organization to serve participants that travel all over the country and world, spreading the love of God through scripture, teaching, learning, and providing aid and disaster relief services, sometimes in very dangerous conditions. That's why we often lead in providing benefits that align with the missions of the organizations that we serve. Many participants are frontline ambassadors to faith, and the exemption allows us to create health plans that reflect that. And the exemption has been in place to protect this unique mission. We ask the committee to protect the exemption of church benefit boards. We also seek to continue communication efforts with Rep. Cortez's office in the development of this bill. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Members, any questions for Ms. Tracy? So your concern with the bill is not that you disagree with the intent of the bill, it's that you have this specific exemption under the ACA, and so every time something like this happens, it sort of erodes that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's
all right. Thank you for being here today, Shanae. Appreciate your testimony. At this time, the chair calls Dr. Stuart Wolf. And Dr. Wolf, I have you registered as Stuart Wolf, MD. You are testifying on behalf of the Texas Urological Society and yourself.
Yes, sir.
You are for the bill.
Yes, sir.
All right, please share your testimony.
Thank you. Good to see you, Dr. Alverson. We met a few months ago. So my name is Stuart Wolf. I'm here to support the bill. As I said, representing Texas Urological Society and also myself as a practicing urologist. I work at Del City Medical Center at the University of Texas, just a few blocks away here down the road. I care for men with prostate cancer, including men who come in with metastatic prostate cancer, which might have been prevented with PSA screening. Urologists, along with medical oncologists, are the two types of doctors that take care of men with prostate cancer. I'm also qualified to speak to you because I was the chair of the Practice Guidelines Committee of the American Urological Association when we wrote the first guidelines on PSA screening. My intention today is to demonstrate to you that it is in the interest of the state of Texas to provide wide availability of PSA screening for prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is the third leading cause of death in Texan men. PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen. It's a chemical that's released by the prostate into the blood in disease states, including cancer. Checking PSA in appropriate men, starting usually in their 50s, assuming there's a 10-year life expectancy, is a standard way to screen for prostate cancer. If the PSA is elevated, you go and do a biopsy, and then when you find the cancer and it's treatable, you treat it before it's spread. Early prostate cancer, as has been pointed out by our patients, has no symptoms. And most men don't get symptoms until the cancer has spread to other parts of their body. Metastatic prostate cancer is incurable. Early stage prostate cancer, the time detected with PSA screening, is highly curable. Now, almost every week in my hospital, and there's only 220 beds in that hospital, we see at least one man with metastatic prostate cancer in whom screening for PSA had never been done. Now, we don't know for sure that PSA screening would have prevented those cancers, but it's likely that they would have. As a scientist, I do feel impelled to tell you a couple of facts that I think are very important here. Number one, metastatic prostate cancer rises in incidence when screening goes down. That's been shown in numerous studies over the last few years. This strongly suggests that PSA screening reduces the chance of getting metastatic prostate cancer. Number two, PSA screening is at least as effective and maybe even more effective at preventing death compared to mammography screening for breast cancer. Now, obviously, I'm in great support of that. Texas Urological Association supports that, and Texas law provides for no-cost mammography screening for Texan women. I'm simply suggesting that we extend the same consideration to the men of Texas that we currently give to the women of Texas. In summary, I think it's in the interest of the state of Texas to provide wide availability of PSA screening for prostate cancer. This will save lives. Thank you very much for your attention and consideration.
Dr. Wolf, we thank you for your testimony. Thanks for being here today. Happy First Tuesday. Just quickly, is it sort of the case, I hear this from my urologist friends a lot, that essentially in the case of prostate cancer, that essentially if a man lives long enough, he has a 100% chance of getting prostate cancer.
Absolutely.
So it's even more likely than breast cancer. I mean, it is literally 100% certainty that at some point the prostate will develop cancer. Is that right?
Absolutely. The good news is that most of those that develop in older age are not lethal cancers. They're non-aggressive. And one of our challenges is trying to sort those out. But certainly the cancers that we pick up with current screening are those aggressive cancers in young men. That's why we do it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Dr. Wolf? Thank you for being here today, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against House Bill 118? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Cortez to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do close.
All right. If there's no objection, House Bill 118 will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none. House Bill 118 will be left pending. At this time, the chair lays out House Bill 2414. The chair offers up a complete committee substitute, and the chair recognizes Chairman Frank to explain his bill.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair Oliverson and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to lay out the committee sub of House Bill 2414 to you today. The bill does, I think, two simple things. You can almost look at it as one. It allows, it does not force, it's a may. It allows a health insurance company or an HMO to provide incentives for enrollees for the patients to use certain physicians or providers through modified deductibles, co-payments, co-insurance, or other cost-sharing provisions. And that wording is straight from the bill. If they do that, if they provide incentives for somebody to go to a provider, it does require and put in statute that they do that with a fiduciary duty, which is important. They can't do it just for their own. They have to do it with a fiduciary duty to the patient or policyholders. Importantly, members, it does not require providers to accept these terms. It doesn't force an insurance company or an HMO to do this, but it just simply allows them. Just want to give you a couple of quick examples. The easiest one is like a scan. Y'all know in insurance, you know, a scan may cost $4,000 at a hospital. It costs $1,000 somewhere else. Right now, at least on the plans governed by TDI, it is nearly impossible for a provider to distinguish and encourage a patient to go to a lower cost provider, even if the performance is exactly the same. In fact, the reason I even knew about this is something that I'm doing with my own healthcare, although we're not governed by TDI. We had an employee I feel like I'm echoing here, sorry. Had a series of 3 CT scan. It was $7,500 at the hospital, $7,500 we have a fairly high deductible plan. We also have a consultant that we work with. And the consultant found that we could get the exact same scan, the same machine, different hospital for $450. So the patient, through our plan, was allowed to pay no deductible. We actually gave them a couple hours extra off and a $50 gas card to go get the plan. It saved the plan a lot of money, and it saved them their entire deductible. That is allowed under all plans. It's allowed under Obamacare. It's allowed under the ERISA. It is not allowed under TDI. Plans do not have that flexibility. And I think it just makes sense to, in my opinion. And so others may think not, but that's why we have hearings and a debate on this. But that's where it came from. So essentially, and I'm happy to answer questions, but House Bill 2414 as substituted, it did some other things, but as substituted, it simply provides flexibility for insurance companies to give options to patients of where they go to seek coverage, and it has to always be in their benefit. They're never going to pay more than they would have under their plan. They can only pay less. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And
Members, any questions? So Chairman, this doesn't prevent, so these are incentives, but essentially there's no rule that a plan could adopt to say that if the person's in the network, even if they're more expensive, I can't prevent you from going to see that person. I can only positively incentivize you to use a lower cost option, but I can't prevent you from using the higher cost option.
No, of course not. No, of course not. They can.
So it's
they can
carrot,
incent.
not stick.
It is a carrot, not a stick, as written, and it also, I think the fiduciary language I think is important because that's a legal definition. They have to set it up to be in the best interest of the plan holder.
Okay, perfect. Members, any questions? We'll reserve your right to close, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Just hang tight because we got 7 witnesses on your bill. You are popular today.
They all love it, right?
Many of them do. At this time, the chair calls Mr. Carl Isett. The Honorable Carl Isett.
Formerly honorable.
You're always honorable in my mind, sir.
My name is
I have you as Carl Isett. You are registered as testifying on behalf of the Texas Association of Benefit Administrators and yourself, and you are for the bill.
I am for the bill.
All right, please share your testimony.
And for the record, I would also state that I don't want any of those chairs again. What Representative Frank brings is what is common in the market today on self-funded healthcare plans, where the plan can go out and direct contract with employers. I remember actually a similar story to Representative Chairman Frank's is that there was a barbed wire fence on 1585 and Slide Road in Lubbock, Texas. It said open air MRI $695 on a barbed wire fence. So there are oftentimes cheaper alternatives that can be contracted or found. Sometimes you may get your MRI at 3 in the morning because the machine's not being used at that time. But these are the kinds of things that can actually bring down the cost for the plan. And I think it's important to remember that for self-funded plans in the general marketplace, these are funded by the employer, and they have plans. They have some clients that haven't had increases in their contribution to the fund for 20 years at a time because they're being able to use these kind of innovations in the marketplace. So we support Chairman Frank in his ongoing efforts to try to bring better market conditions into the market, and we appreciate your time. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Members, any questions for Mr. Isett? Carl, thank you for being here today. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. At this time, the chair calls Samuel Sheets. Samuel Sheets. We'll come back, maybe. Okay. At this time, the chair calls Charles Miller. And I have you registered as Charles Miller, testifying on behalf of Texas 2036, and you are for the bill.
That's correct. Thank you, Chair Frank, for bringing this bill. We view this bill as kind of a companion to another bill that was heard in the Health Select Committee on health reform, HB 711. And what happened in that bill, if I just provide some backstory without testifying on that
So we want
bill.
to stay, we can't. We
Can't do
have
that?
to
Okay.
stay focused on this bill.
We'll stick on just this one. What this does is it really opens up the ability of health plans to provide those incentives to go to the higher value care. Unfortunately, there were barriers in state law that was preventing this. There were also barriers in the market itself. And so we've addressed those barriers in the market with other efforts, and we're now trying to remove the barriers that remain in state law to this happening. Crucially, to make sure that we have a healthy marketplace and that these are balanced efforts, there's a fiduciary duty that's imposed on health benefit plans so that they are acting only in the best interest of the patients. Because there are concerns about overly consolidated health benefit plans self-dealing. That is, if a health benefit plan were to go in and buy up their own provider groups, they may refer to them. And that's why that fiduciary duty that's in there is so important, because it protects the interest of the patient so that when these incentives are provided, they are not benefiting the insurer at the expense of the patient. They are only benefiting the patient. So for that reason, we're supportive.
Okay, so couple questions for you, my friend. Always the smartest guy in the room, so these are the questions I saved for you. I heard you say value, which I agree with. My understanding of value is that is cost plus quality equals value.
I agree with that.
I don't really see anything anywhere in the bill that specifically ties to quality. And when I think of fiduciary, I don't necessarily think of value, I think of cost. So is there something that you see that I'm missing that specifically requires a health insurance plan to look at something other than just the lowest cost provider? That this is actually, a higher cost provider may actually have better quality, which may return a better value?
I think that's implicit in the concept of the fiduciary duty, because it is for the best interest of the patient. It's not strictly for the best financial interest of the patient. And so if you look at the overall interest of the patient, that would be a quality assessment, not purely a lowest price assessment in our view.
And would you see, because you said something else that kind of made my antennae go up. So I think self-dealing is a horrible concept. And should be illegal under all circumstances in healthcare. So if an insurance company are they able to use a provision like this to essentially weaken current requirements against self-dealing, where essentially they're self-referring to business interests that they have an ownership interest in?
If there are existing provisions in law elsewhere that prevent certain types of behavior, this does not open those up. What this does do is enable, except for the specific provision that we're modifying in law. So I want to be very clear about that, because right now there is a prohibition against having these kind of modified deductibles, copays, et cetera. There may be other provisions in law that were passed, for example, last session. HB 1919 is one. This would not open up anything regarding to those. It simply does provide that fiduciary duty for the provisioning of copays, deductibles, cost-sharing requirements.
So let me give you a hypothetical situation, and that is that you have a situation where you have a group of providers, say an orthopedic surgery practice, and they are practicing at a hospital, and they are in network, and the hospital's in network, so there's no out-of-network situation. But the insurance company comes in and purchases a competing practice, and then essentially incentivizes their patients to only use the one practice, not the other practice, in a situation where it becomes anti-competitive for that practice at that hospital. And I think the case would be, maybe orthopedics isn't the best example. Let's just say radiologists, where you're talking about a hospital-based group of providers. Let's say they have a contract with a hospital and they have a contract with an insurance company. And then the insurance company acquires a group of radiologists and essentially incentivizes all of their patients to go to a different radiology group than what is actually contracted with the hospital. And then goes to the hospital and says, if you fire your current radiology group and hire the radiology group that we own, then we will give you a preferred rate. And then at the same time, we will incentivize the patients to come here, because we have this mechanism now in the health benefit plan where we can steer patients to a practice that we own.
I'll be fully honest, I lost the thread and I'm not quite sure what the question was. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Charles. So the issue is that there are situations where you can become so vertically integrated as a health plan that not only do you have contracts and you're working out arrangements with hospitals, but you're actually owning physician practices, and you can use that as leverage against other groups of providers in the marketplace. You can essentially sweeten the deal for the hospital and punish the provider group, and then because you actually own your own competing practice, you can now lawfully steer all your patients to your own practice that you own, as opposed to the marketplace. Do you see what I'm saying? It's creating an unfair competitive advantage for a highly vertically integrated player.
So I'll go back to first principles. I think that we're aligned in that we want healthy, competitive marketplaces, and that's just coming from our perspective as a group here. If there are specific concerns that you have with regard to the bill language that it would create anti-competitive behavior, you have an ally in us in working through that, and I'm happy to go through line by line with you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I know those were very weird hypothetical situations, but these are all rooted in fact, and in fact, they actually have already happened, so.
I do share your concerns regarding vertical integration specifically.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Members, any questions? Representative Harris.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Can you go through what data is out there on the correlation between cost and quality, as far as lower cost and quality, and just what's out there on that?
So the literature is pretty clear that there's no correlation between cost and quality. And you may have a low-cost, high-quality provider. You may have a high-cost, low-quality provider. But there is nothing that you can discern about the quality by looking at the price independently.
Thanks.
Members, any other questions for Mr. Miller? Charles, thank you for being here today. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
At this time, the chair calls Mr. Blake Hudson. And I have you registered as Blake Hudson, testifying on behalf of the Texas Association of Health Plans. And on this bill, you are for the bill.
We are. I had to make sure I grabbed the right one here. So Carl touched on some of this. This is a real, sorry, the boot is doing that thing with the suit pants. He touched on, this is a really common practice in the self-funded market. And there's been some research on this that this is one of the things that actually could save quite a bit of money. There was a health affairs study that said that this sort of concept of tiering could save 5%. You, Dr. Darson, know enough about healthcare policy to know 5% is a big number when it talks about savings. So one of the problems is that, say you have a patient with a $6,000 deductible, and they're going to get, the example I use here is a total knee, okay? In Dallas, for example, that total knee, price transparency data tells us that total knee could cost $16,000 to $61,000. So the patient has no incentive to choose a lower cost. And I think what's important when you see these kind of tiering arrangements, they aren't tiered to the lowest cost, they're to the highest value. And the importance there is quality outcomes can vary, and they don't, as Representative Harris sort of alluded to, they don't just follow cost. So we think it's a good concept. Again, plans are setting up these kind of arrangements regularly in the self-funded market. There's just some significant restrictions in the state regulated market. So we support this as a good step in the right direction. I think there's a number of pieces of legislation around this idea of patient shopping for quality care. And I've heard Chairman Frank talk about how we need competition, we need transparency, but we also need incentives for patients to make smart choices. So I think this bill's right in line with that concept, and happy to take any questions.
That's all right. I'll ask you later. Okay, members, any questions? Okay, we appreciate you, Mr. Hudson.
Thanks, sir.
Huh? You okay coming back after the break? I know you got your own committee.
Pleasure of the chairman. Tony's got it.
Okay, all right. So, members, I apologize. We still have 4 witnesses registered to testify on this bill, but unfortunately, we need to be to the floor in about 5 minutes. So, at this time, the Committee on Insurance will withdraw the committee substitute, and we will leave House Bill 2414 pending if there is no objection. Chair hears none. House Bill 2414 will be left pending. The chair moves that the committee stand in recess until final adjournment recess of the House or during bill referral if permission is granted. Is there objection? Hearing none, the motion prevails. The Committee on Insurance stands in recess.